Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dylan. Those of you who do know me are probably aware that I am a forever DM. When I do get to play, however, my thought process often goes a lot like this. The sorcerer is my favorite class. I love the flavor that they've got. But the flavor isn't well translated into the mechanics, and aside from metamagic, they're kind of just worse wizards. So I usually end up playing something else. Now, obviously, this isn't a good feeling to have about any class, especially your favorite. And so I took it upon myself to rework the sorcerer so that I would actually have fun playing it. Now, the first problem with the sorcerer is that their identity isn't well represented by the in-game mechanics. They're supposed to be innate casters, each of them is supposed to be unique, even among other sorcerers, and they're capable of bending magic to their will. Now, this first piece, that they are innate casters, is only represented by them getting their subclass at level 1, but the same is true for warlocks and clerics, and there's far ways you can get from being an innate caster. So to actually emphasize this aspect, I changed a few things in the class. First is that sorcerers no longer pick their skills from a sorcerer class list, instead choosing a secondary background and gaining its skill proficiencies. Since sorcery can appear anywhere and doesn't train a person in any specific skill set, they now gain their proficiencies based off of their previous experiences. Second is now sorcerers no longer need an arcane focus or a material component to cast their spells. Their body is their arcane focus and they shouldn't need an auxiliary one. This is the added benefit of empowering subtle spell so that it removes all of the remaining components and renders the spell untraceable. The third is now subtle spell is a baseline class feature. Sorcery is discovered because someone does magic without verbal or somatic components, so subtle spell needs to be a baseline class feature that you get at level 1 so you can actually reinforce the flavor of this discovery. Fourth is now sorcerers have the ability to overchannel upon reaching level 15, allowing them to channel vast amounts of power through their body to maximize a spell's effect. Since their body is their conduit of power, they should be able to overexert it to amplify one of their spells. The second aspect of a sorcerer's flavor is that each of them is supposed to be unique. And this mainly comes from the origins and how different and impactful they are. And while yes, each sorcerer's origin is different from another, they aren't impactful enough to actually make their sorcerers feel all that different. Right now, all a sorcerer's origin grants you are 4 levels of abilities, 2 of which few campaigns will ever see, as very few games make it to level 14 and even fewer to level 18. To follow through on this promise of uniqueness, I changed a few things for the sorcerer's origin. Sorcerer's origins now grant you 1 additional spell known per spell level from cantrip all the way to 9th. This gives your origin a direct impact on your magic, while also making it feel like you never outgrow the source of your power, which is possible when your origin magic stops at 5th level spells. Second is that each origin needs its own unique metamagic options. This allows you to delve in and notice the difference between different aspects of an origin, such as a dragon's greed or its territorial nature, while also highlighting the differences between origins by giving them similar metamagic powers, but with a flavorful twist to fit each of them. And finally, origins just simply need more abilities. Since the origin is the source of all of your power, the sorcerer class needs to be one that has a lot of subclass features. Now, for this rework, I only reworked the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer and the Wild Magic Sorcerer, but if you like what I did here, please let me know and I will be more than happy to do others. Also, I reworked how the Wild Magic Surge effect happens to make it feel more fun and flavorful, while also tying it in more closely with all of the other abilities the Wild Magic Sorcerer actually gets. Next up is the Sorcerer's ability to bend the rules of magic. Currently, this is represented by their ability to break down and reconstruct spell slots via sorcery points alongside metamagic. Unfortunately, both of these abilities are fairly disappointing, as you are explicitly discouraged from breaking down and reconstructing spell slots within the same day by the differing amounts of points you get from breaking a spell slot down to the necessary amount to construct one, even of that same level. Metamagic isn't much better, as for the majority of the game you will only have 2 metamagic options, only getting a 3rd at level 10 and a 4th if the game somehow manages to continue to level 17. Now, the way I fixed this is by nixing spell slots and sorcery points entirely. Sorcerers already use the spell point system from the DMG. You may as well just give it to them in its entirety. And all this change does is not punish them for breaking a spell slot down. As for metamagic, they simply need more metamagic abilities. Now, in addition to getting Subtle Spell at level 1, they get a metamagic option at level 3, at level 5, 9, 11, and 13. This allows them to have a total of 6 metamagic options, which allows them to really live up to the name, the Bender of Magic. Since metamagic is no longer tied to sorcery points, since sorcery points no longer exist, metamagic is now tied to your charisma modifier, getting a number of uses per long rest equal to your charisma modifier. This improves to you getting a number of uses per short or long rest upon hitting level 7. The next issue is that while wizards and sorcerers are very different thematically, they share a lot of abilities with one another, which overshadow their differences. For example, sorcerers have just as much knowledge about the arcane arts as wizards do, despite the vast difference in education on the subject, and wizards having the ability to regain spell slots despite not having a well of power to draw on like the sorcerer does. Not only this, but the sorcerer suffers from the fact that they know fewer spells than every other full casting class, a problem we previously solved with the origin spells, but it's still something that I thought I should bring up. Furthermore, the sorcerer spell list is all but an inferior version of the wizard spell list. The sorcerer only has 7 spells on their list that the wizard does not, while the wizard has over 120 spells that the sorcerer will never know. Now, since the casting class's spell list goes a long way in bringing forth its identity, having what amounts to a worse wizard spell list makes the sorcerer feel like a worse wizard. The way I solved this is by splitting both the abilities and the spells across the lines of the character's identities. Since the wizard is the scholar of magic, they should start off not just with automatic proficiency in Arcana, but automatic expertise in it as well. They have studied for years, if not decades. How are they not experts in it at this point? Furthermore, upon reaching 2nd level and them choosing their school of focus, they should gain advantage on all Arcana rolls with relation to their school. Now, since they don't have a well of power to draw upon, they don't get Arcane Recovery anymore. Instead, upon reaching level 5, they gain the ability Ritual Master, which allows them to cast ritual spells during a short or long rest without interrupting that rest. Finally, since Evokers no longer have the ability Overchannel, since that is an ability that evokes a very sorcerous power, they now have the ability to re-roll a damage die when they roll a maximum on any of their evocation spells. This allows them to maintain their identity of being the mage that does more damage than everyone else without breaking into the sorcerer's identity of channeling power directly through their body. As for the sorcerer, they are wellsprings of magic, and as a result, they should get spell points back on a short rest. Now, since they don't have any training, they shouldn't get skills like Arcana and Religion, things that require teaching, unless they choose a secondary background like Scholar that gives them that additional proficiency. Finally, as I said before, their new ability, Pure Power, at level 15, allows them to overchannel spells, something that was previously in the Evoker subclass for the Wizard, but even before that was once known as Maximized Spell, the most powerful among metamagics. For the spell lists, I wanted to divide the spells not only along the lines of the characters' identities, but also some of their class features and incorporate some of the flavor we get from there. For instance, wizards are characters that can switch out their spell lists at the start of every day. They're very flexible in what they are capable of doing, so it makes sense that they would get spells that focus on precision of effect, like Hold Monster is a paralysis spell and that's all it does, but it is very good at that. Whereas sorcerers don't have that flexibility in their class, so they have to get spells that kind of give them a little bit of that flexibility, such as Bigby's Hand, which I renamed Hand of the Colossi, which can do a whole ton of different things, but maybe not as well as each of the individual spells that the wizard has. Now, the wizard is a very practiced mage. They are very controlled and precise in exactly what they want to happen, and so they get spells that when they throw energy around, they get spells that emphasize that control, like Thunderwave and Firestorm. Fire and sound don't move in cubes generally, but the wizard is making it that shape because it's the safest shape that they can manage. Whereas sorcerers get spells that are just channeling power directly through them and taking the natural form of the energy that they direct, such as Fireball or Shatter or Burning Hands. Fire moves in cones and spheres, and so does sound kind of projects out in a spherical direction, actually if it's from a single point. And wizards, they focus on planning and knowledge, so they get spells like Mage Armor and Counterspell that require that extra time or extra thought into the actual action, whereas sorcerers get spells based on instinct, because that's where their power comes. It comes from inside them, and it's not trained, really. So they get spells like Shield that reflect that. Now, obviously, dividing the spell lists along these lines left some holes behind, so I created some new spells to fill in the holes that I created. The new spells will be at the bottom of the new spell list PDF. And I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. Please let me know what you thought either the next time I see you or down in the comments. And if I don't know you in person, please let me know how you found this video. Links to both the PDF for the sorcerer rework as well as the new spell lists and new spells will be down in the description. Please feel free to use them as you will. And until I see you again, stay safe, stay healthy, don't die.